Greetings to everyone. I'm glad to see you. Today's sad and cautionary tale is about a man who found out about his daughter's existence only 20 years after she was born. For your convenience, I have divided the story into chapters. Have a nice listen. Chapter 1. When I sit back and think about where I am in life, I should feel proud. At 44 years old, I'm running a thriving hospitality business, married to a woman who loves me, and raising an 8-year-old son who means the world to me. From the outside looking in, my life probably seems perfect. But perfection is a surface thing. Beneath that, there's a lot of pain that I've tried to ignore, but that has forced its way back into my life. The cracks in my story go back over 20 years to my first marriage. At 22, I married Lily, my first love, a woman I'd been with since we were just kids. We had what seemed like a solid future together. But just 3 years later, she handed me divorce papers and walked away without much of an explanation. I was blindsided and devastated, but I didn't fight it. I let her go, thinking I'd eventually understand. What I didn't know was that there was so much more going on behind the scenes than I could have imagined. After the divorce, I found myself alone in every sense of the word. It wasn't just Lily who walked away. My own family shut me out too. At the time, I had no idea why they abandoned me. I reached out to them, tried visiting, and even called, but every effort was met with silence. I was blocked on social media, my phone calls ignored, and doors literally closed in my face when I tried to visit. It was like I didn't exist to them anymore. The people who should have been my support system through one of the hardest times of my life turned their backs on me completely. For years, I carried that pain, but I didn't dwell on it. I buried it, focusing instead on building a new life. I started over with no family, no real direction, and no idea how I was going to make it. For a while, it felt like my life had no meaning. But thanks to some close friends who refused to let me give up, I pushed forward. I followed my passion and opened a restaurant, something I'd always dreamed of doing. Slowly but surely, I rebuilt my life. It took time, but eventually, I found success, love, and stability. Fast forward to now, and life seems great on paper. I'm married to a wonderful woman, we've built a happy life together, and I've expanded my business into a successful chain of restaurants and hotels. But then came the interview, the one that aired on TV and changed everything. It was supposed to be a moment to celebrate my success, a sign that I'd finally made it. I didn't expect it to bring my family back into my life after 20 years of silence. 3 days ago, my family showed up at my office unannounced. When the receptionist told me my sister and parents were waiting to see me, I couldn't believe it. My first thought was that there had to be a mistake. When I finally saw them, it was surreal. They were acting like no time had passed, praising me for all I'd accomplished, as if they hadn't disappeared from my life for 2 decades. They talked about how proud they were, how much they admired me, and how they wanted to meet my wife and son. But their sudden reappearance wasn't about reconnecting out of love or regret. It was about something much darker. As they started talking, the real reason for their actions began to unfold, and it shattered me all over again. They told me the truth about why they'd abandoned me. Lily had been cheating on me with my cousin, Henry. Not only that, but she'd gotten pregnant during the affair. My family, afraid of upsetting Henry's father, my uncle, who was my dad's boss, chose to support Lily and Henry instead of me. For 2 decades, my family kept this secret from me. They even helped raise Lily's child, a daughter who I just found out exists. She's 20 years old now, and has spent her entire life believing Henry is her father. My family made the choice to cut me out to protect their relationship with my uncle and Henry, sacrificing me in the process. And now, after all this time, they've come back, not because they want to make amends, but because they saw my success and decided they wanted to be part of it. The betrayal hit me like a punch to the gut. To think that my own parents and sister were complicit in covering up an affair that destroyed my marriage and robbed me of the chance to know my daughter is a pain I can't even put into words. It wasn't just the cheating or the divorce. It was the years of lies, the deliberate choice to keep me in the dark, and the fact that they only reached out when it benefited them. Now, I'm left with a mountain of emotions to sort through. I feel anger, betrayal, sadness, and even a sense of guilt. I keep asking myself, what do I do now? Do I let them back into my life? Do I reach out to my daughter, a person I've never met but who is my flesh and blood? My wife, who has been my rock through this, thinks I should at least try to find some resolution, for my own peace of mind if nothing else. But right now, I don't know if I'm ready for that. This is where I am today. I'm trying to navigate a storm of betrayal and secrets, while holding on to the life I've built for myself and my family. It's not easy, and I don't know what the future holds, but one thing is clear: the truth has changed everything. Chapter 2. I was just 22 when I married Lily. We'd been together since middle school, so it felt like the most natural step in the world. She was my first love, and I genuinely believed we'd grow old together. We got married right after finishing college and securing stable jobs. Everything about it seemed perfect, at least at first. The early days of our marriage were like something out of a dream. We had our little routines, our shared jokes, and the belief that we were unstoppable as long as we had each other. I threw myself into our life together, trying to build something strong. We weren't wealthy by any means, but we were comfortable, and I thought we were happy. But about 2 years in, things started to shift, though I couldn't pinpoint why at the time. Lily became distant, pulling away from me in ways I couldn't understand. Conversations felt forced, and the warmth that had once defined our relationship began to cool. I blamed myself. Maybe I wasn't doing enough as a husband, I thought. I worked harder to show her how much I cared, planning little surprises, trying to recreate the magic of our early days. But nothing I did seemed to reach her. It was like I was trying to hold onto sand, and the more effort I put in, the faster it slipped through my fingers. A few weeks before our 3rd anniversary, she handed me divorce papers. There was no fight, no big argument, just her saying she didn't love me anymore and wanted out. I begged her to talk to me, to tell me what went wrong, but she offered nothing except vague explanations about needing something different. She didn't seem angry or upset, just detached, like she'd already moved on. Looking back now, I can see the signs I missed at the time. There were late nights where she claimed to be working or out with friends. There were secretive phone calls, moments where she'd leave the room to text, and an emotional distance I chalked up to stress. But back then, I didn't suspect anything beyond the possibility that maybe she wasn't happy with me. When Lily left, she didn't just take our marriage with her, she took away the life I thought I'd built. I had dreams of starting a family with her, of growing old together, of seeing her smile in the mornings when we woke up. All of that disappeared with one conversation and a stack of papers. As if the divorce wasn't painful enough, my family's reaction, or lack of one, completely blindsided me. I assumed they'd support me, help me through the tough times like any family would. But instead, they turned their backs on me entirely. At first, I thought they were giving me space or maybe didn't know what to say, but soon it became clear that wasn't the case. They stopped answering my calls. My parents wouldn't let me into the house when I visited, and my sister ignored every text I sent her. Eventually, I realized they'd blocked me on social media, too. It was like I'd been erased from their lives. I had no idea why they were acting this way, and their silence hurt almost as much as the divorce itself. I was alone, completely and utterly. There were nights I sat in my apartment staring at the walls, wondering what I had done to deserve this. I replayed every moment of my marriage in my head, trying to find the point where it all went wrong. I even started doubting myself. Maybe I was the problem. Maybe I wasn't good enough for Lily or my family. The weight of everything nearly crushed me. I quit my job, unable to face the world each day, and spent months isolating myself. The man I used to be, the optimistic, driven guy with big dreams, felt like a stranger. It was like the best parts of me had been stripped away, leaving behind someone who didn't know how to keep going. Thankfully, I had friends who refused to give up on me, even when I'd given up on myself. They showed up when I didn't ask them to, dragged me out of my apartment when I didn't want to leave, and reminded me that there was still a world outside the walls I'd built around myself. They didn't let me wallow in my misery for too long. Their support gave me the strength to start putting the pieces of my life back together. Slowly, I began to think about what I wanted to do, not for anyone else, but for myself. That's when the idea of opening a restaurant came back to me. It was a dream I'd always had but had never pursued because life always seemed to get in the way. But now, with nothing to lose, I decided to go for it. The process wasn't easy, especially without my family's support. I had to learn everything from scratch: business plans, finding investors, and navigating the ups and downs of starting something new. But for the first time in years, I felt like I had a purpose again. Every small victory, from signing a lease to serving the first customers, reminded me that I was capable of building something worthwhile. Even though I was moving forward, the pain of my family's abandonment never fully went away. I didn't understand why they cut me off, and the lack of closure left a hole in my heart. I reached out a few times over the years, but it was always the same: radio silence. Over time, I stopped trying, convincing myself that I didn't need them. Still, there were nights when I'd sit in my empty apartment and think about them, wondering if they ever thought about me. Did they miss me? Did they regret pushing me away? Or was I truly nothing to them? Those thoughts haunted me, but I tried to push them aside, focusing instead on the life I was trying to rebuild. It wasn't until much later that I'd learned the truth about why they abandoned me, and that revelation would shatter everything I thought I knew. For now, though, all I could do was put one foot in front of the other and hope that someday things would make sense. Chapter 3. After my divorce and the complete abandonment by my family, I hit rock bottom. At 25, I felt completely alone with no direction or support. For months, I drifted through life, doing nothing but sitting in my apartment, overwhelmed by questions about where everything had gone wrong. I'd lost my wife, my family, and any sense of who I was. During those dark days, my friends became my saving grace. They refused to let me wallow in my misery, showing up unannounced, pulling me out of my apartment, and pushing me to start living again. They reminded me of the man I used to be, a dreamer with ambitions, and encouraged me to start rebuilding my life. One dream I'd buried for years was opening a restaurant. It was something I'd always wanted to do, but I'd let go of the idea during my marriage to Lily, telling myself it wasn't practical. Now, with nothing holding me back, I decided to take a leap of faith and make that dream a reality. The process was daunting. I had no experience running a business, but I dived headfirst into learning. I devoured books, sought advice from anyone in the industry who would talk to me, and slowly began piecing together a plan. The hardest part was securing funding. I had little savings, and banks weren't keen on loaning money to a guy with no business background. For months, I pitched my idea to investors, facing rejection after rejection. Finally, a small group of investors believed in my vision and provided the financial backing I needed. With their support, I began turning my dream into reality. It wasn't easy. There were delays, setbacks, and countless sleepless nights. But 4 years after my divorce, my first restaurant opened. The restaurant was small and modest, but it was mine. I poured my heart into every detail, from the menu to the atmosphere. Even the name was meaningful, inspired by something my parents had once suggested. Though they weren't in my life anymore, using the name felt like a small way of holding on to a connection with them. At first, business was slow, and I doubted myself. But as word spread, the tables began to fill, and before long, the restaurant was thriving. For the first time in years, I felt proud of what I'd accomplished. I had built something from the ground up, proving to myself that I was capable of more than I ever realized. 2 years later, life took another unexpected turn. At an event hosted by mutual friends, I met the woman who would become my wife. She complimented the food at my restaurant, and we struck up a conversation. For the first time since my marriage to Lily, I felt a spark, something I thought I'd lost forever. We started dating, and over the next 3 years, our relationship grew into something solid and beautiful. She was kind, supportive, and understanding, helping me see that I could still find happiness. When I proposed to her, I knew I was ready to take another chance at love. Our wedding was small but perfect, and a few years later, we welcomed our son into the world. Holding him for the first time, I felt a wave of joy and gratitude. He represented a fresh start, a reminder of how far I'd come and how much there was to look forward to. Meanwhile, my business continued to grow. The success of my first restaurant led to a second, then a third. Over time, I expanded into hotels, creating a hospitality company that became my life's work. What began as a dream born from heartbreak turned into a thriving enterprise, a testament to resilience and determination. By the time I reached my 40s, I was the CEO of a successful company, a husband to an amazing woman, and a father to a boy who brought me endless joy. On the surface, my life seemed perfect. But no matter how much I accomplished, there was always a shadow from my past, the unanswered questions about my family's abandonment. Why had they turned their backs on me? Did they ever regret it? I tried to convince myself I didn't need their answers, but deep down, I knew those questions would always haunt me. Then, everything changed when I agreed to a TV interview about my journey from failure to success. It was supposed to be a celebration, a chance to reflect on how far I'd come. But instead, it became the catalyst for something I never expected, my family re-entering my life. The interview aired on a channel I didn't think they'd even watch, but just days later, they showed up at my office. Seeing them again after so many years was surreal. They acted like nothing had happened, praising my accomplishments and expressing a sudden interest in reconnecting. At first, I didn't know what to say. But as they spoke, it became clear that their visit wasn't about love or regret, it was about their own self-interest. They saw my success and decided they wanted to be part of it, ignoring the decades of silence and betrayal. That day, my past caught up with me in ways I couldn't have anticipated. The life I had worked so hard to rebuild was about to be shaken by secrets and revelations I wasn't prepared for. But one thing was certain, the truth would change everything. Chapter 4. 3 days ago, my family showed up at my office, unannounced and completely out of the blue. After 20 years of silence, I had convinced myself that they were gone from my life for good, so hearing from the receptionist that my parents and sister were waiting in the lobby felt surreal. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake. But when I went downstairs, there they were, smiling and acting like no time had passed. Seeing them again stirred up a whirlwind of emotions, anger, confusion, and a faint sliver of hope. They started by congratulating me on my success, saying how proud they were, and how they'd seen my recent interview on TV. They even commented on the family photos that had aired during this segment, saying they wanted to meet my wife and son. It all felt rehearsed, like they'd planned this moment carefully. As they talked, I noticed how casual they were, as if the last 2 decades hadn't happened. No apology for disappearing from my life, no acknowledgement of their betrayal, just a sudden interest in reconnecting. It didn't sit right with me, but I decided to let them speak. I figured this might finally be my chance to get the answers I'd been craving for so many years. What they told me left me reeling. The reason they had turned their backs on me was tied to my first wife, Lily. It wasn't just a divorce or personal falling out. It was about betrayal on a massive scale. Lily had been having an affair during our marriage, and the person she cheated on me with was my cousin, Henry. I had never liked Henry. He was entitled and selfish, always the kind of person who thought he was better than everyone else. But I never thought he'd stoop so low as to pursue my wife. That wasn't the worst of it. Shortly before our divorce, Lily discovered she was pregnant. My family knew this but chose to keep it from me. They decided to support Lily and Henry, going so far as to cut me out of their lives completely. Why? Because Henry's father, my uncle, was my dad's boss. My family didn't want to upset him or jeopardize their relationship with him, so they sacrificed me instead. My parents and sister went along with everything to keep the peace within the family. They helped raise Lily's child, a daughter who is now 20 years old. This daughter, the child I didn't even know existed, was raised to believe Henry was her biological father. My family stayed in touch with her all these years, knowing the truth but never telling me. Hearing this felt like a gut punch. For decades, I had blamed myself for the divorce and wondered why my family had abandoned me. Now, I understood it was never about me. It was about them protecting their own interests. They had made a conscious choice to side with Lily and Henry, hiding the truth from me and cutting me out of my daughter's life. As they told me all of this, they tried to justify their actions. They said they did what they thought was best at the time, insisting it was a complicated situation. But their excuses rang hollow. How could betraying me, their own son and brother, ever be considered the right thing to do? The longer they talked, the clearer their motives became. They weren't here out of guilt or a desire to make amends. They were here because they'd seen my success and wanted to be part of it. My sister even had the audacity to bring up the name of my first restaurant, saying it was based on a suggestion my parents had made years ago. She claimed they deserved credit for my success because of that, as if a single name excused 2 decades of betrayal. By the end of the conversation, I'd had enough. I told them to leave and made it clear I wasn't interested in reconnecting. They protested, insisting we could work things out, but I wasn't having it. I'd spent years building a life without them, and I wasn't about to let them waltz back in like nothing had happened. When they refused to leave, I called security and had them escorted out of the building. Since then, they've been relentless in trying to contact me. They've sent emails, left messages on social media, and even waited outside my office. Their tone has shifted from defensive to apologetic, but I can't bring myself to believe their sincerity. If they were truly sorry, why did it take them 2 decades, and my success, for them to come forward? As much as I want to leave this behind, there's one complication I can't ignore: my daughter. Learning about her has opened a floodgate of emotions. I've missed 20 years of her life because of my family's lies, and now I'm faced with a daunting question. Do I reach out to her? My wife, who has been my unwavering support through this ordeal, thinks I should try. She believes it's important for both of us to have the chance to know each other. But I'm terrified. What if she doesn't want to meet me? What if she blames me for being absent, even though I never knew she existed? I've been wrestling with these thoughts, trying to figure out what to do. On one hand, I feel an overwhelming need to reach out and tell her the truth. On the other hand, I'm scared of the rejection and the emotional toll it might take on both of us. For now, I'm taking things one step at a time. The betrayal by my family is hard enough to process, but the knowledge of my daughter adds a layer of complexity I'm still grappling with. One thing is certain: the choices my family made have caused irreversible damage. They robbed me of 2 decades with my daughter, and that's something I'll never forgive. Chapter 5. After confronting my family and hearing the truth about Lily, Henry, and my daughter, I found myself in a daze. The weight of the betrayal was heavy, pressing on me in ways I didn't know I could endure. My mind kept replaying the conversation with my parents and sister, their justifications for their actions, and their claims of love and regret. But nothing could erase the sting of their choices. They had kept me in the dark for 20 years about my own daughter, a child I didn't even know existed until recently. I struggled to process the fact that she had been alive all this time, that she had grown into a young adult, and that I had no connection to her. My family's choices had robbed me of an entire chapter of my life, a chapter one should have shared with her. Since their departure, my phone had been inundated with messages and emails from them. They were apologetic now, their tone full of regret. But I couldn't bring myself to answer. I'd already made it clear that I wasn't interested in hearing their explanations anymore. They had abandoned me, ignored my pain, and made decisions that altered the course of my life. Now, they wanted to share in the pieces of the life I had worked so hard to build. It was tempting to give in to the hope that some resolution could ease my anger and confusion, but the pain was too raw. I felt betrayed not only by Lily, but by the people I should have trusted the most, my own parents and sister. Their actions felt unforgivable, and yet, here they were, asking for my attention, my forgiveness, and, in their own way, a part of my success. I spent hours sitting with these thoughts, trying to figure out how to move forward. My wife and I talked about this at length. She could see how much this weighed on me, how the burden of their actions was affecting my mental state. She suggested that I should try to find peace by at least exploring the possibility of reconnection, especially with my daughter. Her reasoning was simple. By reaching out, I could finally confront the pain and find closure. But I wasn't so sure. The idea terrified me. What if my daughter didn't want to meet me? What if my apology fell on deaf ears? What if I caused more pain than healing by coming into her life now? It felt like I was standing at the edge of a decision I wasn't prepared to make. I couldn't ignore the reality that this wasn't just about me anymore. My son, my wife, and now my daughter all represented a complicated and emotional web of relationships I wasn't sure how to navigate. I didn't want to make this about my own feelings or fears. I wanted to approach this situation with care, but I had no clear path. One afternoon, I found myself scrolling through social media, struggling to ignore the messages from my family. I found myself staring at the name of my daughter's school, information my parents had passed on during their visit. My assistant had been able to find her social media accounts, and it brought an overwhelming mix of emotions. I could see her profile, photos of her smiling, studying, living her life, unaware that I existed. I couldn't stop wondering, what would it feel like to send her a simple message? How would she react? Would I be invading her life? Or would I be giving her the opportunity to know the truth about herself, about me, about who she truly is? It was tempting to reach out, but my fears kept me from taking that step. My wife continued to remind me that if I wanted closure and peace, I would need to confront the truth head-on. Her words stuck with me, even as doubt lingered. This emotional tug-of-war lasted for days. The idea of sending her a simple, non-threatening message seemed less intimidating than walking into her life uninvited. I knew that if I chose to reach out, I would need to be honest, compassionate, and open about everything, the pain, the secrets, and the fact that I had been absent from her life. I took a deep breath one evening and began drafting a message. I wanted it to be short, sincere, and without pressure. I wasn't sure if I would ever send it, but I felt like taking the first step would give me a clearer sense of where I stood. It felt like standing in the middle of a storm and trying to make sense of the chaos, but for the first time, I was trying to find my footing. In the end, I sent her a message through Instagram. I explained that I was her biological father, and that I had only recently discovered the truth about her existence. I let her know that I didn't want to pressure her into meeting me or having contact if she wasn't ready, but that I was open to answering any questions and learning about her, should she ever want to know me. The message was sent, and now I had to wait. My heart was in my throat as I wondered how she would respond. Would she ignore me? Would she reject me? Or would she give me a chance to know her and, in time, allow her to know me? In the meantime, my mind remained clouded with thoughts of betrayal, pain, and the hope for healing. My life had shifted in ways I couldn't have imagined. My family's betrayal felt like a scar that would never fully heal, but maybe reaching out to her would give me a chance to begin the healing process. I wasn't sure what the future held, but I knew this would be a defining moment. I chose not to dwell too long on what could go wrong. For now, all I could do was take the first step and hope that my daughter might someday give me the opportunity to build a connection. Chapter 6. After sending the message to my daughter, I felt a strange mix of relief and anxiety. The relief came from finally making the decision to reach out to her, to acknowledge the truth and take responsibility for my absence. The anxiety came from not knowing how she would react, if she would respond at all. I knew there was no turning back now, though. My hope was that this first step would provide the answers I desperately needed, whether she accepted me or not. The days after sending the message were agonizing. I checked my phone constantly, wondering if she had seen it, if she would reply, or if this would end in rejection. My wife tried to reassure me, reminding me that I had done the right thing by being honest. She'd always been my rock, helping me stay grounded when my emotions threatened to take over. Her support gave me some comfort, but the uncertainty lingered like a heavy fog. I wondered about her, who she was, how she'd grown up, what her life looked like. She'd spent her whole life thinking Henry was her father, and now she was learning a painful truth about her identity. Would she feel betrayed by me, by the circumstances? Would she resent me for not being there? These questions rattled me, but I tried not to let fear hold me back. I had to take this step, even if I didn't know how it would turn out. Finally, a few days later, a message came. I could hardly believe my eyes when I saw her name pop up on my screen. My heart pounded in my chest as I clicked on the notification. It was her. Her message was short, but it carried so much weight. I didn't know. My mom told me Henry was my dad. I'm shocked. I don't know how to process this right now, but thank you for being honest. Those words hit me like a tidal wave. I could feel her emotions in every word, shock, pain, and confusion. My heart ached for her. She was just beginning to process something that had been hidden from her entire life, and here I was, trying to introduce myself into that emotional upheaval. I wasn't sure if I'd done the right thing, but at least she had responded, and it gave me hope. I took a deep breath and tried to be as calm and compassionate as I could. I replied, I can't imagine how hard this must be for you. I'm so sorry for not being in your life. I'd like to give you whatever space or answers you need, but I'm here if you ever want to talk. Sending the reply felt vulnerable. It felt like taking another step into uncharted territory, but I knew it was necessary. I could sense her hesitation in her next response, but she didn't shut me out. She thanked me for my honesty and said she wasn't sure what to feel yet, that she needed time to think. I respected that. This back and forth with her wasn't just about building a relationship. It was about giving her space, respect, and time to process everything in her own way. I could see that she wasn't ready to dive headfirst into contact, and I didn't want to overwhelm her with my presence. My hope was that by showing her patience and understanding, she would come to trust me over time. At the same time, I was beginning to feel like I was on shaky ground. This wasn't just about sending a message or trying to connect. It was about attempting to mend broken pieces. I felt like a stranger intruding on her life, even though I knew that wasn't my intention. My wife and I talked about it every evening, trying to find the right balance of patience and care. She reminded me that all I could do was give her the space to decide, without pressuring her. So I chose not to push. I decided to wait and give her time. In the meantime, I focused on my work, my son, and the life I had built. I couldn't allow this uncertainty to derail everything I had worked so hard for. Life had already been complicated enough without diving into emotional chaos. A few days later, I found myself thinking about Henry again. I remembered the kind of person he was, rude, entitled, self-centered, and how he had been involved in this betrayal from the very start. It was easy to hate him for what he'd done, but I knew resentment wouldn't solve anything. I didn't want to waste my energy on feelings of anger or regret. My family had already done enough damage. My focus needed to remain on rebuilding, healing, and connecting with my daughter if she gave me the chance. The truth was, there was so much history to process, and even more complicated emotions to navigate. My family's actions had destroyed trust and peace in my life. But this wasn't just about family anymore. This was about finding a connection with my daughter, understanding her, and giving her the opportunity to know me, should she want to. I knew the journey wouldn't be easy. This would be just the first step in what would likely be a long and complicated process. But I was ready. I had no choice but to take the risk, to face my fears and hopes, and to trust that the right path would eventually reveal itself. For now, I would wait. She had opened the door with her response, however hesitantly. My responsibility was to give her the time and space to step through it on her own terms. I could only hope that one day, she would decide to take that step with me. Chapter 7. It had been several weeks since I first sent that initial message to my daughter. Her response, brief and emotional, had left me in a kind of limbo. She was clearly processing the truth, and I knew that rushing her would only push her further from me. I had done my part by being honest. Now, all I could do was wait and give her the time she needed to decide whether or not she wanted to connect with me. Every day felt heavier as I wondered about her, how she was handling the news, and whether my words had caused her pain. I couldn't stop thinking about what her life must have been like all these years, growing up believing Henry was her father, only to learn that wasn't the truth. I couldn't imagine how disorienting that must feel. But I also knew she deserved the choice to come to me on her own terms, without pressure, guilt, or expectations. I threw myself into work to keep my mind off it. My business was doing well, my son was growing and thriving, and my wife continued to be a source of strength and understanding. Still, my thoughts often drifted to my daughter, to the strange and unfamiliar path I now found myself on. I wondered if I'd ever truly know her, if she would ever come into my life, or if I would remain just a distant name on a social media account to her. One evening, as I was sitting in my office reading through some business plans, my phone buzzed. My heart leaped when I saw her name on the screen. My hands trembled as I answered, unsure of what her call meant. "Hello?" I managed to say, my voice unsteady. Her voice came through, soft, hesitant, unsure. "Hi, this is me. I just wanted to talk." I exhaled, my body suddenly feeling both relief and nerves. I tried to stay calm. "Thank you for reaching out," I said. "I know this must be overwhelming, but I really appreciate you taking this step." We began talking, and the conversation was far from easy. At first, she was careful with her words, hesitant to reveal too much, or maybe unsure how much she could trust me. I could hear her hesitation in every pause, every choice of phrasing. We talked about family, about my absence, and about the difficult feelings that came with learning the truth. "I don't know what to feel right now," she admitted at one point. "I guess I'm just trying to process it. I grew up with a different kind of life, and now it feels like everything has changed." Her words hit me hard. I knew she wasn't angry, at least not yet, but her confusion, her sadness, and her pain came through loud and clear. I did my best to reassure her, to tell her that I was here for her, that I didn't expect anything from her, that all I wanted was to give her the space to heal and process things. "I can't imagine how much pain this must bring," I said. "I miss so much of your life, and I can't undo that. But I can be here now, if you'll let me." The conversation felt like just the first step in building trust, one small moment at a time. She listened, and I could tell she was trying to find her own footing in this new, painful reality. I knew that this wouldn't be fixed overnight, that rebuilding trust would take time, patience, and effort. After about half an hour, she hesitated, saying she needed some space to think. I could feel the uncertainty in her voice, but I chose not to press. "I completely understand," I said. "Take as much time as you need. I'm here if you want to reach out again." The call ended, and I sat in my office for a long time. My emotions were conflicted. Relief that she had called and spoken with me. Fear about where this journey would take us. And the overwhelming weight of regret over all that had come before. My wife came into the room a short while later. "How did it go?" she asked. I looked at her and exhaled slowly. "It was a start," I said. "It was good, but there's so much more ahead of us." We sat together for a while, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. I knew this wouldn't be easy. Healing never is. Trust has to be earned, and the road ahead would be long and filled with challenges. But at least now, we had a beginning. The next few weeks saw small, tentative steps. My daughter would reach out every few days, always cautious, but always willing to connect. We talked about the little things, her life, her dreams, and even the family secrets that had torn so much apart. Each conversation felt like a building block, small but vital. I knew there would be stumbles, moments when the pain would resurface, but for the first time in years, I allowed myself to believe that this was a journey worth taking. In time, my daughter and I would learn about each other, who we were as individuals, how we fit into each other's lives, and how to move forward from here. I could feel that this journey wouldn't erase the pain or betrayal of the past, but it could build a new foundation for something stronger. Life isn't about erasing mistakes or pretending the past didn't happen. It's about learning to move forward, to try again, to listen, and to find healing. This was only the beginning, but I chose to stay present for it, one step at a time. So, thank you for listening to the end. I hope you enjoyed the story. Did Lita and her parents do the right thing? Write in the comments, and I'd also be grateful if you like it. See you soon.